In the glittering halls of the celestial court, where magic and nobility intertwined like threads in an enchanted tapestry, Princess Aja wasn't what she appeared to be. Her striking blue hair, adorned with crimson roses and crystalline jewels, wasn't a fashion statement. It was a curse, or perhaps a blessing, depending on who you asked. Every night, as the moon reached its peak, Aja transformed from the poised princess everyone knew into a being of pure, magical energy, her ethereal blue hair becoming a cascade of flowing starlight. This was her secret, passed down through generations of her bloodline, but with a twist none of her ancestors had experienced. She could manipulate time itself during these transformations. The curse had originated 3 centuries ago, when her ancestor had fallen in love with a star spirit. Their forbidden union had blessed and cursed their descendants with celestial powers. That Aja's ability to bend time was unprecedented. The red roses in her hair weren't mere decorations. They were temporal anchors, keeping her tethered to the present moment. Lord Thorn, the royal court's most eligible bachelor, had been pursuing Aja with increasing determination. His dark eyes held secrets of their own, and his perfectly timed appearances at her most vulnerable moments seemed too convenient to be coincidence. Aja found herself drawn to him, despite the warnings of her temporal powers that something about him wasn't quite right. "Your Highness," Thorn would say, bowing with practiced grace, "you seem troubled tonight." His genuine concern only made things more complicated. What Aja didn't know was that Thorn had his own agenda. He wasn't just another nobleman. He was a time walker, sent from 500 years in the future to prevent a catastrophe that would begin with Aja's powers spiraling out of control. His mission was to either help her control her abilities or eliminate the threat she posed to the timeline. The twist? He hadn't expected to fall in love with his target. During one particularly magnificent ball, as Aja danced with Thorn beneath the enchanted chandeliers, she felt her control slipping. The roses in her began to glow, and time began to fracture around them. Guests moved in slow motion, then accelerated, then froze completely. "I can't control it anymore," she whispered, panic rising in her voice. Thorn pulled her closer, his voice steady. "Then don't. Trust me." At that moment, the truth unraveled like a spell breaking. Aja's powers weren't a curse at all. They were nature's response to a temporal paradox created by none other than Thorn himself. His future self had attempted to prevent a catastrophe, but in doing so, had created the very conditions that would cause it. "You're like me," Aja realized, watching as Thorn's own temporal energy became visible to her enhanced senses. "But how?" "I came to stop you," he admitted, still holding her close as time swirled chaotically around them. "But I realized something. The future I'm trying to prevent isn't caused by your powers becoming uncontrollable. It's caused by you trying too hard to control them." The real twist revealed itself in that moment of clarity. The roses in Aja's hair weren't restraining her power. They were amplifying it. Each crimson bloom was a focal point for temporal energy, placed there generations ago by future Thorn, in an attempt to help her ancestor control their celestial powers. But the roses had evolved, becoming something more complex with each generation. As they danced in their bubble of fractured time, Aja made a decision. Instead of fighting her powers, she embraced them fully for the first time. The roses in her hair burst into brilliant light, their petals becoming crystallized moments in time. The temporal energy that had been building for generations, released in a controlled cascade. Time itself seemed to hold its breath as past, present, and future aligned. Aja and Thorn found themselves witnessing snippets of their own story from multiple perspectives. Their first meeting seen from the future, their last dance seen from the past, their current embrace viewed from countless possible timelines. The catastrophe wasn't your powers, Thorn realized. It was the attempt to prevent them from existing at all. Every time I tried to change the past, it only made the temporal knot tighter. Azure smiled, her blue hair flowing with temporal energy. Then let's untie it together. Using their combined powers, they began to heal the fractured timelines. The roses in Azure's hair transformed into temporal keystones, no longer restraining her power but helping her channel it properly. The curse became a gift, and the gift became a responsibility. The ball resumed its normal flow, the guests unaware of the temporal drama that had unfolded. But Azure and Thorn were forever changed. Their love story had transcended time itself, creating a new kind of magic, one that didn't fight against the natural flow of time but danced with it, like partners in an eternal waltz. As they continued their dance, Azure wore a knowing smile. She had discovered that sometimes the greatest magic comes not from controlling power, but from letting it flow naturally. The blue-haired princess and her time-walking love had found their own way to balance the forces of time and love, creating a harmony that would echo through all possible futures. And the roses? They continued to bloom in her hair, no longer temporal, anchors but living reminders that the most powerful magic of all is the ability to let go of control and trust in the dance of destiny. The end.